you're trying to get insights from your data or looking to prepare certain reports, you need to visit the new series on pivot tables by Excel Carols, and this is the first video of the series. Pivot tables, which is also counted as one of the most important tools of advanced Excel, are actually very helpful in visualizing data. And guess what? It's very easy to prepare one. Let's see how. Say we have a sales data representing different products sold in different regions and the numbers related to that. We have 648 rows. So it's next to impossible to draw any conclusion by looking at the data. But we can actually represent this data in an easily understandable form with the help of pivot tables. Before making a pivot table, we need to check on 3 points. First, there should be column headers on the top of every column. Second, there should not be any blank cell in between the data set. And third, there should not be any sum, subtotal or aggregate formula applied in between the data set. Since we have ensured all the 3 checks, we are good to make a pivot table. To make a pivot table, go to the Insert tab, click on this drop down arrow of pivot table, select from table or range. Now see that MS Excel is trying to hard code the range. The problem with hard coding the range is that pivot table will not automatically get updated in case of any additional data that might be added to this data set later on. So the better idea here is to convert this data set into an official Excel table. You can enter the table by going to Table option in the Insert tab, or you can simply press Ctrl T. So we have the dialog box before here. We will check my table has headers because we know that the first row is the column headers. Now click on OK and see Excel has converted this into an Excel table. In case the table layout bothers you, you can change it. So I like this layout, so we will be keeping this layout over here. It's a good practice to name the data table. To do that, simply select the table or simply select on any cell inside the table. Go to Table Design tab. Name this table as sales_data. Make sure that there is no space in between. In case you need to put any space, give underscore instead. So press enter. And now we can insert a pivot table by going to Pivot Table options from the Insert tab. Select Pivot Table. Now we can see that MS Excel has recognized the table and is putting up the name accordingly. By default, Excel enters the pivot table in a new worksheet. In case you want the pivot table to be inserted in the same worksheet as your data, you can select existing worksheet. Over here, I would prefer going with a new worksheet. So select new worksheet, click on OK. And you see we have the pivot table over here. Now we can play around with the data simply by dragging and dropping. But in case you want to skip this dragging and dropping, there is a better option in which we can do this. Let's delete the sheet. So instead of going to pivot table, go to recommended pivot tables. So Excel suggests us with a couple of options which we might need. You can select any of these and we will have the preview in the right hand side. Let's go for the first one. And we have the pivot table ready over here. This table shows the sum of amounts of products sold in different regions. If you compare with the data, so this is the amount we have and this is the region. If you double click on the amount or the sum of amount, you will get to see the breakup. So if you see, we have the region Australia over here. It shows the breakup in a different sheet. And if you compare this with the pivot table, so Australia has a total of 3,95,430 as the sum. If you want to change the format, right click on any of the cells over here. Don't go to format cells, go to number format. And since this is an amount, we can select currency. let's do not have any decimal places, and let's have English United States as the currency symbol. So over here you can see that we have added 1000 separated to it. In the right hand side we have pivot table fields. You can change the layout of the pivot table field by selecting options from this drop down arrow. In case you're comfortable with this kind of a layout, you can go for it. I am comfortable with this layout. If you observe closely, these are the column headers that we had in the data set. If you want to change the cell or font color of your pivot table headers, like you can change it from here. Let's select this and change the colors. So it looks good now. In case you want to add some more fields, you can simply add these by dragging as per your convenience. So we have the sum of customers. Now over here, sum of customers doesn't make sense. We need to have the count of customers. So if you want to have the count of customers, go to the cell, right click, go to value field settings and select count. You can also go to the value field setting options from this drop down arrow. In case you want to change these headers, make sure that whatever name you're putting, it should not be identical to any of the field over here. So if you are writing amount, put a space after amount and press enter. Similarly, in case of count of customers, if you want to remove this part, make sure you put a space before or after customers to make it non-identical to one of the fields over here. Let's change the cell and font color and let's make it region. Also, instead of grand total, let's simply write total, and there we go. In case there is a requirement of more than one pivot table on the same data set, the technique is to copy and paste an existing pivot table and modify the fields as per requirement. By doing this, we are keeping all the pivot tables in the same pivot cache, and hence if we have to refresh one of the pivot tables due to additional data, all other pivot tables gets refreshed on its own. Let's modify our second data table. Let's remove region as one of the field. Instead, let's have salesperson on the rows. We don't need the number of customers over here. And for amount, let's have it as a percentage. So to do that, right click on any of the cell, go to show values as, and make it percentage of grand total. Now, as a part of best practices, whenever we are creating a pivot table, always right click on any of the cells, go to pivot table options and uncheck this box in case you have it checked. Click on OK. This will keep the column width same even if the pivot table below has shorter cells. Let's change this header over here. Put a space and change the cell and font color. Before moving further, let's give a name to our pivot table so that it becomes easier for us to identify. Just select one of the cell, go to pivot table analyze and type the name. If we want to have further filtering by product type, we can insert product type in the form of a slicer. For that, we need to go to pivot table analyze, insert slicer, check on product and click OK. Or we can right click on product, click on add as slicer. So we see that we have a slicer over here, and now we have to connect this slicer to both the pivot tables. To do that, right click on the slicer, go to report connections, check all your pivot tables and click on OK. Now you see our pivot table will change values as and when we select the product. If we want to view the data of multiple products at a time, we can press the Ctrl key or click on the multi-select button and select the products as per our requirement. To remove the filters, we need to click on the clear filters button. Let's do a little bit of finishing touch to our slicer. Go to the slicer and let's choose one of the slicer designs. First of all, let's remove the border. So to do that, you can either go to new slicer style, format options, go to the border tab and click on none, or a shorter approach is simply click on one of the designs of your choice, select duplicate, go to format, the border tab, click on none, press OK, again OK, and select the style. So now you see our slicer has no more borders. Also, we can remove the grid lines so that our report looks clean. Drag the slicer towards the pivot table. Also, you can increase the number of columns so that you do not have to scroll down to find out any product. Let's have 4 columns and let's increase the dialog box. Now, if we select on any of the product, it will give us the data in the pivot table, and at the same time we find this report to be very clean. Pivot table has now summarized our data to a readable format. Pivot table actually has a lot in it, including visualizing the data, which we are going to discuss in our upcoming videos. So stay tuned. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, please like and share this. Mention your feedback in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to get all the notifications.